Hello and welcome to KPod, the podcast about Korean Americans in arts and culture. I'm Juliana Sohn, a photographer.
And I'm Catherine Hong, a writer and editor.
Today, we are thrilled to be speaking with artist Romon K in his Brooklyn studio. Ro, who also goes by the name Rostarr, is a multidisciplinary artist who works in painting, drawing, sculpture, digital, and film. He was born in South Korea, raised in Virginia outside of DC, and attended SVA in New York, where he studied graphic design and printmaking. He's probably best known for his large-scale black and white paintings and murals featuring abstract, calligraphic brushstrokes. The years he spent as a b-boy is reflected in the street art feel found in some of his work. He's participated in a number of high-profile collaborations with Moncler, Diesel, Agnes B, and is still remembered for the much-coveted collection of sneakers and apparel for Nike in 2016. So I first met Ro over 20 years ago when I knew him as a frequent visitor of my friend Chris Moore's apartment in what was the crash pad to hang out in. It was always filled with what seemed like an endless stream of young artists all trying to make their mark. A few months ago, I ran into Ro again when we both happened to be at my friend's ceramic studio at the same time. Catherine and I are so pleased to be interviewing you today to find out what you've been up to since we used to hang out. So thanks for having us, Ro. So you currently have a traveling show called Pareidolia Behavior, which showed in New York and Japan and is opening soon in Hong Kong. Could you please tell us about this body of work?
This body of work, it's spans over 20 years from like 1999 to like 2019. So it's 20 years of work. And it's mostly about faces or me making faces in my drawings or sketchbook drawings.
So this is almost like a retrospective.
Kind of, yeah. I don't want to call it a retrospective because I've never really shown these kind of works. It's mostly works that were unseen, never seen by the public eye. What I would usually do is I would make paintings or more abstract paintings on canvas. And when I would take a break from making my paintings, I'll go to my sketchbooks and then I'll just draw faces. Like I'll just sit and draw like 30, 40 or fill up a whole book like one night or two. But it would just be faces, and it would always be something that I guess was a little strange for me, that like I would just do faces and I would go and paint abstraction.
Oh, yeah. So it was almost like a balance. Like you needed something to like maybe familiar or something you can connect with in your sketch.
Yeah, I guess I just love to do it, and I guess I had, maybe because I had developed a style that was more abstract, that I felt I needed to just stay with that. And then, but secretly I loved making faces, so I'm like a closet case face maker, and so now I'm coming out of the closet with these drawings. And so I'm just unleashing it on the world right now. And, really kind of reinvigorating myself, because over the years of just doing abstraction, I'm actually kind of sick of doing abstraction right now. So I just want to go into something different. And so, this is kind of like my foray to a new thing, which is not a new thing. You know what I mean? It's a new style.
It's new for the audience.
New for the audience, yeah. And for me to make on large canvas or, as a jumping point to larger works, and just making faces, in my works, yeah.
I don't think a lot of people have heard this word before, pareidolia.
It's based off the word Pareidolia, which is the phenomenon of like seeing faces. Like, you'll see a face inside of a cloud, or, so I was always interested in faces, and I'd find faces and no matter what I look at, so I like that like unearthing the abstract, from the abstraction and seeing faces underneath that, and so.
It's so interesting because your work is so abstract and pattern-like, but you had this secret compulsion to do faces, which is it seems so much more personal and identifiable.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I'm not telling 100% truth where I didn't make faces in my paintings. Like I would put them in once in a while, but a lot of times most people would just see something that looked like a pattern or abstraction, and then I would sneak them in, like certain paintings would have a face or a character in there, so I guess it was more me fighting against what, what true abstract expressionism is, which is really no faces or no characters.
Makes me think you don't have a long-standing relationship with one particular gallery, is that right?
No, not exactly, no.
So you've always had this sort of freedom, like you don't have someone telling you, Romon, you should...
You can't do that.
Yeah, or you should
yes.
start doing this. I want to show you, pushing you in one way or another, which can be very helpful for a lot of artists.
Right.
But I think other artists would find that restricting or...
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that it would also be helpful for artists that really wanted to create like a signature voice or a style that they own. You got to own your style nowadays, and so I guess for me, like I want to own as many styles as possible versus owning just one, because I have too many things I want to express, and that's always been a problem for me. But it's not a problem in a good way,
Yeah.
It's really, I'm taking a risk by doing that, by jumping from one style to another. And it's not that I don't know what I want to do. It's just that I'll master one style and do as much as I want with it. And then I'll put that to the side, and then I'll create a new one. And then I'll start down that path, or whatever I'm feeling at the moment is important to me. You know what I mean? It's like what I'm going to produce it should be how I'm feeling at that moment. It should not be about what I think sells or what the gallery thinks sells or what's popular or what I think I should be doing, because I don't want people to lose people or something. You know what I mean? Like that's really like a thing that happens to artists, I think. I don't want to feel pigeonholed or, I feel like that's more like mental death for me.
Well, the word multidisciplinary, multi-syllabic word, it really describes what you do, because, I mean, you have interests and then collaborations and then different mediums. And it's interesting because when I look at your work, a lot of it looks like what could be like the popular street work or graffiti artist work that is like, murals out there.
Right,
but it's got a different sensibility that is fine art. And
yeah, I mean, I've never been a graffiti artist. I mean, it's funny because my brother was a graffiti artist when we were growing up, like in the 80s. And I was actually a break dancer. So I was more about like physical expression versus like, artistic expression. It was a different type of artistic expression. It was more with my body. But I guess I didn't want to be like my brother, so I didn't do graffiti. You know what I mean? But I did respect it always, and I still respect it. And I have a lot of good friends that do graffiti, but I never wanted to be that person. I never felt like, oh yeah, I'm going to write my name all over. It wasn't about ego or about like, oh, I want people to know, I want to get my name everywhere. It's not that. I didn't care about that,
I wanted to ask you about your name, Rostarr, and the brand that you came up with, because I thought it was really interesting that you were talking about it, that it's a brand and an identity as opposed to who you are as an individual.
Right. So most people would think Rostarr is a graffiti name or something like that. It's really it's like a nom de plume. But at the end of the day, like when I came up with that name, actually my good friend Rodney Smith, I used to share a studio with the Zoo York skateboard. Like there was a skateboard company. And so in 92, 93, like we shared studios together. And so he would call everybody something Starr, like, Ann Starr, John Starr, Rostarr, and so it just stuck to me. I'm like, wow, that's a really cool name. It sounds like a corporation, like Rostarr Corporation or something you see on a truck driving by, and I thought that's interesting. I never had a tag name or, a name like that before. And so I thought that could be an interesting name, that would be more like a brand versus, using my name, Romon K, or I just didn't like, maybe I had this thing where I was really insecure about being an Asian in America, or like, just like people seeing me as an Asian artist, or you're really, Asians are great at design, or they're, or something, I just didn't want to be judged for like being Asian. So I just wanted people to look at my work. And then Rostarr was just, that was it, and that's what, so they would judge the work, not the person,
It's really interesting that you have that name and you could kind of hide behind it, but it also opened you up to a lot of creativity, because it wasn't like you as the front man. It was this brand.
Yeah, it's almost like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah,
It was.
yeah.
It gave me more freedom to, it's like in a sense, like if you think about people wearing like costumes that like during Halloween, you could be a person that has no personality whatsoever, and you can go out and you throw a costume on, and you're like, you can act the fool and just be whatever you want, and it gives you more freedom in a sense because, if you have that insecurity, I guess it can help you to bring out more, of who you really are inside, or maybe the things that you want to experiment with, or,
So what did your parents think of your career, and what did they do?
Well, I mean, my father he studied business, and my mother was a pharmacist, and so my father's more into business and like more a literary person. Like my father also, writes poetry, and he became a pastor like later in my life, not when I was growing up, thank God. He became a pastor when I was like 16, 17. So he was already going back and forth from Korea to America, like trying to get his degrees because he just hated being in America. So, so he wanted something else, and he wanted us, me and my brother, to be, of course, a businessman or lawyer, a doctor, very typical kind of thing. And so, my brother and I did really terrible in school, and maybe we just rebelled a lot. We just didn't really get with it. We just did terribly in school, and
From a young age, you were never...
Yeah, we just never could pay attention in school. We were more into like drawing. My brother was excellent at drawing, so he would just, we would just get caught for drawing all the time, and get in trouble for that, and I would even like make comic books, homemade comic books, and try to sell them. Try to sell them to my classmates,
Early
what I mean?
zines.
Yeah, I would do things like that. I was really into that kind of thing growing up, and I was always more interested in like, either more physical things like, like PE and, but never cared about school. But yeah, my brother and I, we did everything together, got in trouble together.
So were you punished a lot as a kid because you weren't living up to their expectations?
Always, yeah. My brother and I, we were punished
SATs?
like, yeah, we were punished all the time. It was just really a constant thing.
What was the punishment?
Well, definitely getting beat, just getting, getting like broomsticks broken, whatever's on the table thrown at us, like the nut tray, like,
it's all coming out.
like oranges, whatever was there.
What's on hand?
Whatever's on hand, lots of belts, like, lots of punishment, But, I mean, not that, let me give my dad something, is like, he was unhappy with us, and wanted only the best from us. But, he was also frustrated in being in America and not living up to his dream and potential. Like he was, opened up a deli, like a grocery store, like just like the American dream or whatever, and trying to like make it work. He just was never happy and never satisfied because he's a literary person. And he's also, wanted, to be a pastor and do all these other things. And, he was just angry at us because we were like, not doing anything that he wanted. We were just terrible,
Because he came here to make these sacrifices and worked for you guys, and you
pretty
guys
much.
were
This
like,
is what I realized later. At the time, I know, like,
You
what the
weren't
hell's wrong
following
with
the
this
script.
guy? Yeah, but like, I have to, I have to give it to him that, he was an unhappy person, and he did it all for us. Because when we, finished high school, my parents both moved back to Korea.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, they were just like, fuck this place.
Right.
We're going back. We don't need America.
They were literally here just for you guys.
us. And that made it very evident that they were here just for us.
So your brother left for college first? What did he
So,
do? Right.
So he was really great at drawing, and like he was like, he had like, he was the older son. So he was actually the oldest in the family. So, the oldest boy in the family, is like the prince. He's like the, like he gets looked after, lots of nurturing. He was getting sent to like art school, got art classes like separately.
I see.
Like, and I was just the second son that like, well, you just, whatever, just hang out, do whatever, and I never had any nurturing at all. I was just kind of like, okay, let me try to draw. I had no goal to be an artist or anything. But my brother did very well. Like he was an excellent drawer, and like, he had a great portfolio, got accepted like full scholarship to like Corcoran University in DC and like other art schools around America. But then he really wanted to come to New York. And so we both loved New York, of course. And so he got accepted at FIT, on a full scholarship. So it was just like, okay, well, he went. And he's 2 grades older than me. So in 87, he came to New York.
Got it. So he kind of broke in your parents a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is with the creative thing, like, because he had something, he was really good.
They could see that.
More than see it. It's just that his teachers raved about him. Like, he did great works. He was getting scholarships and he just had it, even, other kids hated him because he drew so good. Like the jocks hated him because he would draw muscle dudes better than they could. You know what I mean? Like it was just interesting. My brother just had talent and it was, and it was honed in well, and so we knew where he was going. And so he came to New York, he got a scholarship for fashion illustration. And then he went into fashion design after that.
So do you feel like because your parents left the country, you had a lot more freedom because they weren't physically around and you could go and party and be creative and live more of the artist life?
When I came to New York, definitely there was a lot of that. I definitely partied a lot. But I was already doing that in DC a lot. So I kind of got that partying and going to clubs and, like doing drugs and all kinds of... That was high school, yeah. So, I had a very interesting like youth, like growing up, And so when I came to New York, I had already feel like I've done that. And so even though I came to New York and was discovering all the clubs and all the fun stuff here, like I got that out of the way early.
Your brother goes off to FIT. You're at home alone, and you weren't given all the supplementary art classes or whatnot.
Nothing
How
like
did
that.
you end up at SVA?
Well, I went to FIT first. So, okay, let's go back a little bit. So, yeah, I was in DC by myself for a couple years. My brother and I were both heavily into fashion growing up. And so, from when I was a sophomore to we were both into like designer fashion. Like we love Japanese designers like Yohji Yamamoto,
my favorite,
like Gaultier or Comme des Garçons, and beg, steal, or borrow, like put on layaway, whatever. We would be wearing like all black Yohji and you know what I mean, like shoulder pads and
kids,
yeah. And so like I used to work at a clothing boutique in like near where I lived, and then they would these guys would sell Japanese designer clothing. And so I worked there and I was really into fashion and my brother was very into fashion, and so, naturally he wanted to go to New York and naturally I wanted to go to New York too. But what I was doing while I was in DC was, working at this clothing store and then going out to clubs like 5 nights a week, like
wearing your Yohji.
Wearing, borrowing from them, like, or whatever, like, but like my clothes and just, I was really into clubs and like fashion and dressing up. And so I even, I was like the best dressed in my senior class.
Oh, that's awesome.
So on top of that, it was kind of like, it was just funny because I didn't even go to school, and then I could care less about when I would show up, when I didn't even give a shit. So I was really into like nightlife, and like in the fashion scene. And so at that time, I thought at most, I'll come to New York and I'll just, be a manager at like the Comme des Garçons boutique or something. Or
you were aiming for store manager.
Yeah, or just being a fashion, in the fashion world, being a fashion person. Not the designer, but like, just like running a store or owning a store, something like that, when I was really young. What changed was I started taking a lot of art classes because, when I later in junior year or senior year, you can pick whatever classes you want. And so I started piling on the art classes because I was just better at that stuff. So I'd take like photography and like two art classes, a photography class, and then after school, another art class, So I was like, half of my curriculum was like art classes. And then not that I wanted to be an artist, it's just that I preferred to do or be in that kind of area, and just doing that kind of work. And then my counselor, when I was in my senior year, asked me, well, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, well, I want to make money and I want to be creative. So it's like, advertising design. I was like, oh, okay, I don't know about that, And so somehow I came to New York and I didn't have a portfolio at all. So I couldn't even get into any art school. So
Wait, you came to New York, but you were not accepted at a school at that point?
yeah, I had bad SAT scores. I was terrible. I had nowhere to go to. I just knew I was going to follow my brother.
And what were your parents thinking at that point?
They just were like,
you graduated
please
high
figure.
school.
Yeah, they were just like, I hope you figure it out.
Oh, we're going?
Yeah, like follow your brother. Try to figure it out,
I feel like they just kind of gave up.
They gave up. Me and my brother just
we're just the biggest disappointments to
yes,
them,
my
right?
brother
At
and
that
I
point, let's just
drove
say it.
them so crazy that they just like gave up. They were like, okay, they gave up their dreams of us being a doctor, lawyer, of us marrying a Korean Christian girl. They just gave up all of that. They're like, just go, please. Just be good at. I hope you can be good at something. We pray for you. We pray for you. See you. And I didn't see my parents for like 3-4 years. I swear, they didn't even come to America to visit. Like maybe when I graduated. That's it. So they were just like, okay, here you guys are. Just and I guess in that sense of freedom, like it was really great. But I had already did what I wanted to, whether I was sneaking out
Did
or
you have any feeling of guilt at all, or were you just about disappointing them? Did it give you a lot of trauma? Do you have
no?
any kind of thing like that?
I wasn't really. I didn't care about what they wanted. I think that my parents were. I don't know if all Korean parents are that way, but like my parents were so forceful and just shoved things down our throat. They were just like, we're going to go to church every Sunday, whether you're sick or on your deathbed, no matter what. You do what we tell you. They're overbearing. They just, made us do things we didn't want all our lives, And so, we would just rebel. That's all we knew how to do was rebel. And so it didn't feel bad.
Yeah.
I started to understand them later as I got older, but
You got a small snapshot of your dad, but what was your mom like? Because your mom was working as a pharmacist, so she was a
actually
professor.
never did that as a job.
Oh, she didn't.
No, when she came, she was starting to get into that, and then in Korea, and then she came to America, and then she didn't do that kind of work. So she was a housewife.
I see.
Yeah, and then later on, she got a job at for the government or something, doing like IRS or something. And she just had to do something. But her life was mainly focused around the church and religion and, and raising us basically. So my mom's very tough. Most Korean women are the ones that wear the pants. So she held it down. So let my dad go away and get his degree when we were like in junior high school. And so throughout our entire high school years, like older teenage boys, we were, with just my mother.
Ah, so she was the one that was like getting run ragged because your dad was out studying.
Yeah, he was studying, coming back twice a year for just summer and winter breaks. And so she held it down. She's very tough. She was very, but we drove her crazy. That's why we got punished. That's why we got punished so much, because we gave her so much hell. And
so was she the one that was doling out the corporal punishment?
As much as she could try to, she would just pretty much write everything down that we did.
Oh, I see. She was keeping a ledger.
She would keep a nice ledger of the shit we did. And so when my dad would come back, he would just, like the first week is cool, but the second week was just hell. And then we'd be like punished, like for all the things that we did. It was just like,
this is for the time.
This is for that. This is for that. This is for that. And we're like, and then by the time he left, we were like, fuck, I hate you. Like, just get the fuck out of here. Like we just wanted him to leave so bad. We just hated him.
But it sounds like you and your brother had a really nice relationship.
We did.
Right?
We always had each other, and we were close in age.
Too, because if he got all the, number one son treatment, that you weren't resentful.
I just knew that it was happening, but at the same time, I guess it's like understood, like in Asian culture, like hierarchy is understood. You just like, okay, that's what it is, It's, of course, at times, he would come back with like a Yoji jacket. Like, I'm like, where did you get the money for that? Like, what did you, who, you know what I'm saying? Like, we get the same allowance. Like, where did you get this fucking jacket from? You know, he's like, oh, I put it on layaway. I'm like, where did you get the money? You didn't eat? Like, give me a fucking break. Like, you know,
Number one
grandpa
son,
and like mom was giving
Yeah.
him like, you know, here's 100 on the side. Like, be a good boy. Anyway, but I knew. And then, you know, on my birthday, he would get a gift on my birthday. I'm like, why the fuck is he getting a gift on my birthday? You know, I'm just like, this is ridiculous, you know? But I'm like, you know what? This is
But he put you
Asian
up.
way.
When you graduated,
Yeah.
he let you sleep in his apartment.
Yeah, we
sounds
stayed.
like,
Well,
right?
yeah. I mean, our parents, you know, we're lucky. Our parents got us a place. Well, for him, a nice condo, and like we lived together. It was just a studio, but we lived together. It was our place, you know, and we were taken care of. Our parents took care of our
They did
school.
give you some money. They didn't.
Yeah. They didn't just say,
take
"Hey,
off.
do whatever you're gonna do." You know, they paid for our school and gave us a place to stay. And if we wanted anything else, you have to figure that out on your own. So, and that was it. Yeah. But it was really our parents were. I had to thank them for letting us go to art school or letting me even go and do whatever I wanted to do, because they just I guess they gave up in one way, but they're hoping that, okay, well, maybe you know what you want to do and somehow you'll figure it out.
How's your relationship with them now?
It's really good. It's really, really good. I mean, we talk often, and they're very supportive of my art now. You know, they
When
weren't
did that
for,
turn, would you say?
you know, it took a good, 15, 20 years for them to see the light. You know, I would do really cool things and work with big companies and like show them, hey, look what I did. And they would be proud of me. And then as soon as things were kind of slowing down, where I'm like, oh, it's like tough with the money, they'd be like, oh, get real, be realistic. Now go get a job. You had your fun. You know what I mean? Like they would just give me that speech. Yeah, you had your fun. You tried to do it. Now you couldn't do it. So they just, and I'm like, damn, that's fucked up. So I would just make sure that I'm like, I was never giving up. I was always a rebellious person to the core. So even if they would say those things, I would be like, well, fuck that. I'm going to keep going with what I believe in. I don't, whatever you say, I don't care.
So they never came back to live. They're still
never
in
came
Korea.
back. Yeah, they just stayed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, it was it was interesting. Yeah, to say the least that, that they let us do that. But
it's very, it feels unconventional for Korean parents.
Yeah, but I think
that
when your parents give up
leave
though,
the country, yeah.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, it sounds a bit unconventional, yeah, for them to leave. But my dad had loftier goals, and he wanted to be a pastor, and then he became a professor.
Those?
Yeah, he became a pastor. He also was a professor, and then became a dean of a university, and so
God,
he became
good for
like
them.
he just
Wow.
went for what he wanted. My
Yeah.
mom took on all the brunt of raising us and to let him go do his thing.
Yeah.
And
It's
so,
funny
yeah.
that all the men got to do what they wanted.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
what
true.
happened to your mom then when she went back to Korea?
She just stayed a housewife and is a devout Christian, the most devout Christian I've ever seen, and so.
I bet my parents could give
I'm
your
sure.
parents a run
I'm
for the
sure.
money.
My parents could probably kick your ass too.
Yeah, of course. I'm sure. I mean, it's just that it's amazing that,
Yeah.
but, it's
But
really
she's
her.
the pastor's wife.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can we find out, how
sure.
did you get into school? What did
So,
you
okay.
do? Going from, your
Right.
brother's studio apartment.
Right. So as soon as I came to New York, I went and applied at FIT. I didn't make it. I didn't have a portfolio, so I couldn't get into daytime program. And so I took night classes. And so I took, at first I started advertising design, and I really kind of just hated advertising. But what I did discover is that I really loved graphic design, which was part of the curriculum, was graphic design, logo design, typography, those kind of things. That side I fell in love with. The advertising in commercial kind of aspect, I hated all of that. And so I didn't, so I took a couple years. I took a year and a half night classes and then got enough credits to join the daytime program.
What were you doing during the day then?
I was sleeping. Because I was at night, pretty much at night, I would sleep all day because I would go to a night class. And then after that, we'd go out to clubs all night. And then I'd sleep all day, just do a little homework, go to class, go out all night. You know, that was my rhythm. It worked, you know. It worked. And then I would have a job on the side or whatever, but, you know, yeah.
And then so you went from classes at SV.
So then, I went. So then I got my associate degree, and I didn't actually get accepted into upper division, which is like going to get my bachelor's or whatever, and because my teachers hated me, and I hated advertising design. So I was like, at that point, I was like, just fuck this school, fuck advertising design, and I went back to Korea. And told my parents, you know, I was really into cooking at the time. So I was thinking, oh, maybe I'll become a chef. I want to go to culinary school or something. I was telling my parents, and then my mom just was like, no way.
It's worse and worse with every.
Oh, like, no, please don't. Yeah, exactly. And so I was like just a little bit lost at that moment. And then, but at the same time, I really wanted to go to SVA because it was a private school. It was a better school. And, I just felt like, I just wanted something else. I wanted to go in for graphic design, and so I was already taking my book there, seeing if I can transfer my credits, and I could. And so I just didn't think it was going to happen because my parents, they didn't want to pay that much money. It's a very expensive school, and compared to FIT, of course.
Yeah.
And so then I asked, I'm like, well, I really want to go to SVA if that's possible. And so they thought about it and they let me do it. From that point, I'd say on, I really flourished because the teachers I really liked, like everything that they were teaching, I was with it. Like I was studying with an experimental design teacher, and that was really helpful to me, and so all the things I was doing at that school, I was just like so giddy and really happy to be at a school like that, And it was like kind of annoying, to other students because other students are just like so jaded and come from wealthy families and they just don't have any clue what they're doing. They're just like, yeah,
what a
whatever.
turnaround in school experience for you.
Yeah, so that changed my life, like really going to that school, because then I realized what I really wanted to do. I really wanted to just do and my teacher was an experimental design. He was actually a painter and experimental design teacher, and so he really brought out more of me doing illustration, doing silk screening, as well as delving deeper into my psychology of why I do what I do. Or it was almost like a psychology design. It was really hard to explain. His name's Frank Young, very amazing person and teacher, and so he really got that out of me, and pushed me to keep pulling those inner demons and whatever have you, onto, into my projects. And so, I mean, a lot of other students dropped out of his class because they're like, what is this? I didn't sign up for this shit. They were like, this is too much personal information. People just wanted to just do stuff and make money.
That's the kind of thing that I think you would find in a teacher in a painting class.
Exactly.
And less so in a graphic design.
Right. So he was an artist himself, and that's why he was really pulling those things out, and that's why I gravitated towards him. And so I studied heavily with him, as my portfolio teacher, and just I would take 2 or 3 classes with him, and per semester. So I just stayed with him, and it helped me to develop a lot, and that just changed my life at that point. Yeah.
So that kind of brings us up to maybe the time that I knew you.
Well, that's 94, 93. I met you in
later,
99, 2000, I think, around that time.
Yeah, right around then.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like there was so much going on, and everyone was young and just didn't have that much to lose, and just trying to find their creativity in their way.
Oh, yeah.
What were you doing at that time?
In the 90s and the late 90s.
Yeah.
And so after I graduated from school, my first job out of school was actually with Nike. So not a job where they hired me to do a drawing, an illustration of a basketball player, and it was for Hoop Heroes Tour, it was called. And it was crazy because I was literally just graduating from school, And like, you know.
And that was, they got you based on your...
After I was taking my portfolio out to people, and I had taken my book to someone at Tommy Boy Records, and that person knew somebody that was starting a job, a young Kim, in fact, was his name, was starting a job at Wieden and Kennedy. And so he needed an illustrator for this Nike job. And so his friend Erwin introduced me to him. And so I sent my book out to him, and then I got the job. And then it was just like, whoa, like, and I got paid like something like $5,000, which was at the time out of school, I've never had seen that much money ever. You know what I mean?
It's still a lot of money.
Yeah, but that was like so much.
Yeah.
It was that, I think that $5,000 sustained me for like 6 months.
Wow.
Like I could have a studio. I could go out to eat every night. I could like, you know, buy some clothes. You know what I'm saying? It was really crazy.
I think that's cool that you ended up then doing a really big, high-profile collaboration with Nike, and you had started with that.
That's my first
nice.
project out of school. Yeah, which is, I'm so fortunate for those things to happen. And so after then after 6 months of like trying to do my own thing in the studio and trying to freelance, it was really tough because I didn't know how to, you know, get jobs. I didn't know how to like, you know, no one teaches you how to get jobs and make money. You know, they just teach you how to put a portfolio together.
Right. So then you went to work at Elektra.
That's right. So I remember taking my book there, and they really, the art director, the head art director there, loved my work. So she's like, anytime you want to come work for me, you know. I was like, so I was a little desperate. And then I was like, well, all right, I'll go work for Elektra Records, because I really loved Old Dirty Bastard, you know, that musician, the rapper. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll do his packaging or something. So then I ended up working there for like a year and a half, like 2 years, a little over 2 years, 2.5 years. And so I really got my chops there. I really figured out, you know, how to use the computer, which I didn't know how to use very well. I knew how to do everything by hand, you know, hand mechanicals and doing everything, X-Acto and gluing things down and that kind of thing. So I wasn't really good at the computer, and then I learned how to use the computer very well at that point. I learned how to art direct. I became an art director after that. And so I learned how the industry ran. And then I learned what it was to get jobs, who to talk to, this and that. And then by the end of '97, mid '97, I had to move on. I was just like, this is not good for me anymore.
Did you meet Old Dirty Bastard?
I did meet Old Dirty Bastard, and I did work on a single for him. I worked
Mission
on
accomplished.
So I did a few really interesting projects there. I did Missy Elliott's first album.
Cool.
I directed that. I got to design a logo for MC Light. Work with Das Effects, Ziggy Marley and the Melody Makers, and I. Nancy Boy, I don't know if you know that group, Nancy Boy. Donovan Leitch, so I did their album. And then I did Third Eye Blind, you know, was that, don't jump off that ledge, my friend. You know, I don't know. Anyway, so I did their album. So I did some really interesting stuff. I did Akon, you know, his logo, and worked with him a little bit. Anyhow, that was very interesting to work with that and like figure out how to be an art director and do packaging and just do all the things. But that was not what I was really interested in doing, you know, at all. And so
it was during this time, I think, that you met Juliana, right? Like
afterwards.
Okay.
This was like, late 90s. This is like 2000, I'll say we met. So like after that, like when I was at Elektra and I was like really like sick of working there, I was going home and like just painting and like just like getting back into my illustration and doing my own thing. And so I would stay up all night, smoke weed, and just paint. And then, you know, like after months of that happening, I started to really develop my own style. And then I was like, really like, I just couldn't even sleep. I would just stay up all night, go to work. And then I would just be like, I just made all this incredible stuff that I'm so proud of. And then like going into work and like hating everything I'm doing, hating the people, like just, you know, working with clients that are just like, you know. I realized that I had something else that I really was more passionate about. And that was how I felt before I took the job to begin with. It was I wanted to do my own thing. And so I went freelance after that. I quit the job, and then I took a stint for like a little freelance job where I went to London to work for Arena On Plus magazine.
Yeah.
And then I would also freelance at The Face magazine. When I wasn't working at Arena On Plus, I would stay in London for like 2 months at a time. The issue only comes out twice a year, so I would just go back. I would go to London for 2 months and live, and so it was very interesting. Like, and I was a huge fan of like The Face and Arena, and just wanting to go to London really bad. So it's interesting that I quit that job and then I did that for a little bit. But at the same time, I was doing my painting and doing my own illustration, that kind of thing, And I was really kind of sick of doing design. So eventually I just, just trying to push my illustration more than I was my design. I didn't care about design. And so I came back to New York and I just, started doing more of my personal work. And then that started to take off and people really liked it, and I would get my illustrations into magazines or my paintings into magazines. And then I got offered shows and from one show to another. And then eventually that just became a thing where it was like, oh, I need to do like design heavy and then like my art would be here. But then eventually it just went like this.
I saw a video that you made where you were breakdancing with paint.
Yes.
When was that?
That was in 2009 or 2009. And so that was for a film that I made with the Soundwalk. There's like these sound artists, and they had recorded sounds of like the city for like 10 years. And it was like all different types. It was just very ethereal, interesting. It's just like someone speaking poetry or like kids rapping on the street or, some crazy man, going off, you know what I mean? It was really like interesting, it was like, so the soundtrack was already made. And so I pretty much added what I saw, like my experience into like for the visual aspect of the film. Is
that the closest you ever got to doing performance art? Did you do other types of performance art?
I never did performance art in front. People I would paint live. I've done live painting, and which I really hated doing that, but I would do that. And but it was interesting to do that. But for the film, I wanted to, really make something interesting, my own personal experience, and and like adding my painting and my life experience with it. So yeah, it was very, very cool film and very interesting concept. Yeah.
You have a lot of different techniques, but one that seems like you've been really recognized for is this calligraphic style, right?
Yeah. Abstract calligraphy.
Abstract calligraphy, often using ink or sometimes acrylic, maybe?
Yeah, I use acrylic or ink, or it all depends. Yeah.
And like maybe a really wide brush. Can you tell us, how did you develop that style, and what inspired you? Well,
I mean, I definitely was always inspired by Arabic calligraphy, and then I loved like Thai writing, and I love calligraphy, or I love like typography, and so I love not only making my own typography, but looking at foreign writing, and I always thought Arabic writing was really beautiful. I didn't know what it was saying, but it was just really gestural and beautiful. And same with Chinese and Korean, like sumi or calligraphy, it was very beautiful. You'd see the brush like just rubbed and like splatted, and I just loved the feel, and it really reminded me of like graffiti in some way, but at the same time I didn't know what it was saying, so I wanted to just use that as like before I got into that kind of painting, like the calligraphic, I was making paintings that were very very, how do you say, like polymorphic, kind of like bubble shapes, and like one would go into another, and things would it looked like clouds like dancing or fighting, you know what I'm saying? And then I would throw a character in there, and so I was making, that's how I started doing my own style of painting in 96, 97. That was like what I had developed as my style, was with that kind of free flow. I never sketched before I would draw or do a painting. It just started from one point and see where it led me. And so I liked that style for a while. It was very colorful and cute. But then after 9/11, I felt like I was starting to paint. I was like, this is not, I couldn't do it anymore because it wasn't expressive enough. You know, like my expression had changed from that point on. And then I decided to go to black because I used to do very colorful paintings, like pink and blue and whatever. It was just like really, I think because I just wanted people to like my work, I think, at the time.
Or maybe you were just exuberant at that time.
Yeah, at that time, I was just really colorful and trying to be fun, or I don't even know what. But then, like, I felt it wasn't really expressing what I was really, truly feeling. And so from that point on, I started really doing more like black and white, and then more like one stroke, like calligraphy, like more Asian calligraphy.
It's kind of a combination of very controlled and very free, you know? Like,
Exactly, yeah. All those elements came into play, you know, like with Arabic calligraphy. And then I started to just form my own style from that. And then making big paintings and doing murals and what have you.
So I am curious about what it was like for you to grow up as a Korean male in Virginia and DC. I hear this, I think, quite frequently, where a lot of Asian men, they gravitate towards like hip hop culture or like the b-boys or whatnot.
Yeah.
Because it's an identity that is something that they feel they can identify with, or they can that it's more expressive of how they're feeling. And I'm not sure that there was much of an Asian male culture or an Asian culture like for the youth when we were growing up. And so that was something that a lot of kids, I think, gravitated towards.
Yeah, that's most definitely. The thing is, like, my experience as an Asian male growing up in like in Virginia, or it was really tough. I mean, there was a lot of racism. I didn't have an identity. I mean, and I didn't even have Korean friends, really. The only Korean friends I had was my brother, and then we would go to church, which was off really far away, and then I wouldn't even hang out with these people. And so we would just hang out at church, and there's my church Korean friends, and then we would go back to where we lived, and it was just me and my brother, and then, we were by ourselves. So that's why my brother and I are very tight, because we had each other, thank goodness. But it was really tough. I mean, there was a lot of, racism that we had to deal with, that people were always, trying us and testing us and like, messing with my brother and, or trying to mess with me. And it was like, I had to pull knives out on kids.
Wow.
Like I remember distinctly once at like a Chuck E. Cheese, we were like, playing some video games and I was just putting my quarters on the top while some white kid was playing. And then I guess I was stressing him out because I wanted to play, whatever. And then he loses and he leaves and he's like, go ahead, have it, chink. I'm like, it's like, what? I got so angry at that point, and I was like, I think I was like 12 or 13, and like that I just like dropped the game and I looked for the kid, and I had like a butterfly knife, and then I was like, you fucking call me chink? It's like, I like took my knife out. I was like, don't ever fucking call me chink again, The kid like got to his knees, started crying, and like,
oh my God.
I'm like, motherfucker, like, And then another Asian kid came next to me. He's like, that's right, kid, man. You should never have said that shit. It's like, yo, and I'm like, ah. And then like, I just like put the knife away, and then like I totally like slid off, and like security was coming. I just like ducked them. But I remember that moment very distinctly because I'm like, I had just had enough, at that time. And so at that time I was also breakdancing. So I had empowered myself, And so the thing with breakdancing, it's like, or hip hop culture, it came from like, it was all made from like this idea that making something from nothing, it's like you had nothing. You just had two rocks, or you're just patting on something or you're just patting on your chest or making a beat with your mouth, whatever it was like self-empowerment, There's just like, from the worst places come the most beautiful things sometimes. That sense of like, not having anything, but then, figuring out how you can have self-respect or like have something for yourself. I didn't realize that at the time, but, like it was really important for me to discover hip hop and And like, not only, my parents wouldn't let us listen to like, rock on the radio, or like, because it would be, oh, that's the devil's music. So I'm like, shit, you can't listen to rock, So when hip hop came out, my parents didn't know what it was. They didn't know what they were saying. So then like, oh, I can listen to this then, right? And I'm like dancing, and they're like, oh, okay, that's good. So I was allowed to listen to it. And so that was really, I'm so glad, Thank God gangster rap hadn't come out at that time. It was all good times, like, like hip to the hopper, like really fun stuff. And so, and my parents would just say, they're like, what are you doing on the floor? But I guess you love it, But before that, it's like, I had no identity. Like, no girls, like, looked at me like, I just didn't know my place. I was like in junior high school, like, I didn't even know how to dress. I didn't even know what was going on, to be honest. I was trying to be preppy, trying to fit in with the white kids. And it was just like kind of weird, like, just wasn't happening. And my brother had a rough time with that, As soon as I learned how to breakdance, I saw it on TV or watched Beat Street or something, like I learned, I taught myself. And then once
Did you find a community then?
So once, once I learned how to breakdance and then people knew I could break, then next thing you know, I had like a white girlfriend. I'm like, that's like making out with me in the middle of the hallway in front of everybody. I'm like, wow, like shit came up, you know what I mean? Like life changed from that point on. Then I had another white girlfriend and like, and then I became popular after that. And I never knew what that felt like before.
Can you still break dance?
I can still break dance.
I love it. And you have a child, right?
Yeah, I have two kids.
Two
Two boys.
How old
yeah.
Are they?
5 and 3.5.
And do they see you dancing? You taught
well,
them?
I don't like break in front of them, but if I show them, I can spin on my hand, and they're like, whoa, like, and I'll do like some funny stuff, and they're just, but they're really good at dancing. And so they learned capoeira at school, so they're like, they're like already jumping on the floor, doing crazy stuff. So I'm like, you got something.
It's great to grow up with a dad who breakdances.
Yeah,
definitely. And then I have friends that are like serious breakdancers in Korea, and like amazing b-boys, and so they're always like showing off for them and stuff. So I have to give my parents credit. Raising two boys is very, 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 very tough, and and I don't want to raise them.
You two sounded pretty exceptional as well. Like I have two boys, and they don't come close to what you guys.
Yeah, I think that my brother and I, or me especially, I've always been a person that just can't be told what to do. I just as soon as you tell me, I do the opposite. And because my parents, maybe because they forced me to do what they wanted, that I was just like, I couldn't. That's my personality. I could not listen to them. I could just not listen to anybody, even my teachers. Like, like read this book. Okay, as soon as I start reading, I'm like, I just start getting tired and fall asleep because like, I just cannot listen to people, and to my own detriment, and then I wish I didn't have that. But, that was in part my parents' fault for forcing me to do what I didn't want to do, and that sucks. And so I'm not forcing my kids to do things. Like if they want to draw, they can draw. If they don't want to draw, then don't draw. I'm trying to hone their skill into what they like. If you like this, do that. I'm trying to at least, be nurturing in every way to what they like. And so it's funny because my kids are 16 months apart and my brother and I are 18 months apart. So I'm literally seeing my life in front of me, as your mom might say, oh, you don't know how hard it is to have two boys like you and your brother. And I'm like, oh, yeah, whatever. Now, that's my life lesson now.
So if
which is so funny.
Son,
yeah.
In high school,
so
stops
crazy.
going to class and wants to go out to a club 5 nights a week, are you going to let him do it?
No, not exactly. Because it's different. Because I'm not forcing him to do things like, where, you know what I mean? It's like my parents, like they did things to me that like made me like, just want to do whatever I want. It was a different era, like going to clubs is not even going to be something cool for my kids, when they get older. I was lucky enough to find my own way through all the craziness and whatever, and this is my story. This is my life. This is my path,
So I have a question about the art scene today.
Yeah.
Do you meet a lot of young artists? What's that like for you? Now you're almost like not elder, but elder statesman of art. You know, you've been around, you've had shows, you have memories from the 90s. Mm-hmm. What do you make of this younger generation of kids who might be trying to be doing something like you're doing?
Well, I like it now. I mean, before I used to feel more protective of things, like when people would emulate, you know, because people would, you know, I didn't, you know, now I see myself more as like trying to influence people and seeing how I can help, you know, and that's the best that I can do is to influence and help people to get that creativeness out of them, you know.
In what way would you say people were emulating?
Well, they would just because they really didn't have role models, or they would copy my style in some way. There's a lot of artists I meet that they're like, oh, look what I'm doing. And I'm like, oh yeah, it looks like my stuff. That's cool, you know.
You got to find their own voice. Right
you
now,
got to find your own voice. Yeah.
You start out by copying it because that's the things you like.
Yeah, exactly. And it's because you don't know any better. But at least you know what you like.
Yeah.
So like even when I was in college, like I really loved Basquiat and Keith Haring and things like that. And I might emulate a little bit when I was in college, but I realized that, you know, I need to respect myself and I have to respect them, the artists, the true artists, you know, and you'll find your own voice eventually. And so nowadays I feel really good about that when I try to talk to kids all the time, or they'll DM me and I'll say, yeah, you know, you should really keep doing this. And, you know, I'll be very supportive. Before I was a little less supportive because I was coming up on my own. Mm-hmm. Nobody helped me. I did everything myself. And I felt like I had to hold on to it real tight. People were just stealing bits and pieces from me. I'm like getting angry, you know, just, you know what I mean? I was really like, you know, more like in a graffiti artist way, like, oh, you copied my shit, you biting my shit, you know, I'm going to take you out. Like, it was really like.
Butterfly knife.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, right. Don't make me pull my butterfly knife on me. But, you know, but now it's like, you know, I feel like it's really, really awesome, you know, and that like, you know, there's so many artists out there. It's just the scene is blown up so much and it's really difficult. So no matter the thousands and thousands of new artists out there, I mean, it takes a lot of hard work and dedication and you got to really find your own voice, whatever it is, but you have to keep going through it. And living a life of an artist, it looks great from the outside, but the truth is that it's a lot of suffering and pain and like, you know, trials and tribulations. It's a roller coaster, you know, unless you're well off or just super lucky like that, from the 1% that are super lucky like that. But most of the times, you know, it's not. So, you know, I my heart goes out to anybody that wants to be an artist because it's going to be difficult. You know, just prepare yourself. But, you know, if I can give a little insight and, you know, give my experience, that's why I'm even doing this talk now, because I want to give people my experience. And, you know, like, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there like me, you know.
So tell us where our listeners can find you on social media or your website.
On Instagram, you can find me at Rostarr NYC, Rostarr NYC, or on my website, www.rostarr.com. I have a show coming up in Hong Kong in July at the Wow Store Gallery, WOAW, and I'll be making a Metacom bear brick toy that's coming out in August, so look out for that. It's very cool. And then also a collaboration I'm doing with Moncler is coming out this fall, so look out for that, the 1952 Moncler line.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you for having us. It's lovely to see you now after all these years.
Yeah,
and
now that I'm not a snot-nosed kid, like I've grown up, you know.
You were never a snot-nosed
No, but
kid.
you know what I'm saying. It's just like, you know, it's just at that time, it was very early. So, yeah, it's interesting that I've come a long way from there.
Thank you, Ro.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
KPod is a production of KoreanAmericanStory.org. Our producer is Kevin Park. Our editor is AJ Valente, and our executive producer is HJ Lee. You can email us with comments and suggestions at kpod@KoreanAmericanStory.org. You can see Juliana's portraits of our guests and some behind-the-scenes photos at KoreanAmericanStory.org. You can follow Juliana on Instagram at Juliana_Sohn. For news and updates on KPod, follow Korean American Story on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.